Hello, everyone. I hope that your heart is doing well out there. I want to say a little something on that, but the majority of this video is going to be dedicated to talking about timeline work in trauma therapy, trauma recovery. But before we go into that, let's talk about the heart for a moment and maybe even stop whatever it is that you're doing and start to become aware of your heart in this moment. Not just the physical heart within your body, which has a very strong electromagnetic field, but the quality of the energy of heart, of love, of connection. Is it here? How much is it here? How is your heart today? There's something really beautiful that happens when we deeply embody with the heart, and it takes time. It happens in layers because every single one of us are walking around with some wound of separation. Just existing as an individual ego in a body can be traumatizing. When we don't have the proper context, when we don't have the connection to the processes and the systems that are literally everywhere, but sometimes it takes us a while to get access to that information. Thank God for the internet in a lot of ways, because it's been easier for people to access that. But without that, we're sort of lost. And we're all in this process of coming home. And some of us are a little bit more deeply arrived in that place of home, but what it ultimately all comes down to is the level of love that we have been able to remember ourselves as. And I know that that sounds really corny, but it's the truth. Because that compassionate witness, not just the use of the mind, but the true heart intelligence to restore that and live from that, to treat ourselves that way, to treat other people that way. It changes the choices that we make, and it changes what we see as possible in our reality. It opens up realities that are there, but maybe we just haven't been able to see them because we've been living in that place of separation within ourselves and feeling disconnected from that life force energy that is truly here for us to tap into and to bring through and cultivate and grow and expand that energy. I wanted to start with that. If you want to share down below the quality of your heart and be witnessed for whoever will come across your comment, please do. So I want to do a little dive into timeline work. So, first of all, why would we do timeline work? What is that? There's a couple of ways that I have come to understand it. So, when we experience something traumatic, we get stuck in time. Many different levels, right? We can get psychologically stuck in time, emotionally stuck in time, somatically, nervous system-wise stuck in time. All of these things. And through the process of soul retrieval, which is one lens of looking at it, right? A piece of your consciousness fragmented in that moment, and there is a trigger that keeps coming up, and we utilize that trigger to discover where the roots of that come from, and usually that's from a core memory. Now, there's plenty of people out there that do not have access to a lot of memories. Sometimes these memories spontaneously arise when we are in, so memory is state dependent. So when we're working with things like soul retrieval and your nervous system and your emotional body and you're going towards that material and that content, oftentimes pieces of those memories will come up. There's like a window into the subconscious and the unconscious, and there's a window into the state-dependent memories that are connected to triggers, for example. and these can be like flashbacks that people have, or somatic flashbacks, or emotional flashbacks. They may not have images of things, or you may not have images of things, but ultimately the experience is held somewhere. And you may not understand where it's coming from, and we don't always need to know where it's coming from. But when we have a specific memory, then we do this memory reconsolidation, right? We meet needs that were not met. We help the body, the organism, to move through certain somatic responses that it didn't get to complete. That could be a lot of different things. Fight, flight, freeze, fawn. We help to negotiate these experiences at a psychological level and energetic level. There's a process that I work with called the completion process, which comes from Teal Swan. There are other similar processes which have been, my ears are ringing. Which usually is a sign for me to pay attention. I can't remember the names of the other, there's at least 2 other processes that I know of that are very similar to that one. So all a process is like a technology. And I personally find that some of the best processes are ones that are very organic and adaptable to, sort of open-ended, adaptable to whatever's happening in the moment, to the individual. So if we have a specific memory, one thing that we might do, right, and completion process and these similar processes are what we call titrated. So in somatic experiencing, which is a modality that's utilized for healing complex PTSD and shock trauma and a bunch of other different things at an organismic and nervous system level, there's something called pulling taffy and timeline work. So that's where we take a specific memory, and there's a whole process around that. But both the timeline work and the pulling taffy in somatic experiencing, which is how we effectively process and integrate and discharge traumatic memories piece by piece, it's titrated, and so is the completion process, which is a form of memory reconsolidation. But it's so much deeper than that, right? This, on all levels, we're also talking about bringing literal life force energy back to the being, because that's what happens, right? Our consciousness splits like a stream in those moments. And so we're bringing that stream back into the greater channel and the greater river. So that titration is really key, and meaning we're just doing small pieces at a time. We're waiting for these waves, right? And every system is going to be different. Where like some systems we need to take a lot of, before we're going to do timeline work, before we're going to do traumatic memory reconsolidation or soul retrieval with that, there has to be a level of stability. There has to be a level of foundation to do that work. So there's things that often will happen beforehand, because if the system just gets flooded, which is something I talked about in my last video, and we're moving out of our window of tolerance and out of capacity, then we're not doing good trauma healing work. We're re-traumatizing you, and that's not what we want, right? So we do these little pieces at a time. We wait for these waves to complete, but that's in a system that has the capacity to do that. And if we're not there yet, then we take it in even smaller chunks. And one of the interesting things about the somatic experiencing form of like pulling taffy and timeline work, where you're working with a specific memory, is that when we have something traumatic happen, there's different ways that the memory is fragmented, right? So like smell and hearing and sight and taste and sensory perception can get compartmentalized, and that's often the case. And we also tend to, but I can't make sweeping generalizations here, because this is such a deep and complex, there's not a one size fits all. But generally speaking, if somebody remembers something traumatic, they go towards, their being goes towards what we call T0. And T0 in a timeline is like the point of impact of the most traumatic part of it. Now, sometimes people have blocked that piece out, and they'll have sort of like, I have a little piece of what happened after, and I have pieces of what happened before the T0. But this concept of a scale, right, where T0 is the most traumatic moment, and then we have like T-1, T-2, T-3, the -1, -2, -3 are all the things leading up to that, which tend to be a safer zone than T0. So we want to work with, again, like the periphery. We want to discharge everything before getting to the T0. And so we'll even jump forward in time. And this is a part of pendulation. This is a part of movement between that prevents that re-traumatization. So there was some point, right, the person's still alive, no matter what the traumatic thing was that happened. So at some point, they knew that they were going to be okay, or they knew that they were going to get out of that situation, or at some point there was something that shifted. And so you want to bring the attention to like what we call like T+1, T+2, T+3 on that timeline. What are the things that happened after that most traumatic part, and when did we start to know that we were going to be able to get free from that, right? Then we might pop back into something that happened before. So there's this really non-linear way of actually processing somatically and resourcing the organism to the degree that it makes processing the T0 possible, which I think is very helpful information to put out there. You might find that particularly interesting if you're a facilitator yourself, but this is just an introduction, or maybe this helps you to contextualize some really good healing experiences that you've had where you worked from the periphery in, or you've worked with specific memories or timelines. And the thing is that, just because you work with something one time, sometimes people will think, well, if I'm having to work with this thing over and over and over again, there may be something that could be tweaked to be more efficient in the way, like if there's something that's getting stuck and you're finding yourself back in that same place, it might be good to have somebody else there with you who can help you to figure out, is there something that I'm missing here that could make this a little bit more, not that any of this stuff is easy, but that could make it like click or have something change. But I've had so many experiences where there were just certain memories or certain repeating things, right? Not just something that happened once, but because we end up repeating like a skipping CD, these experiences, or we've had something happen multiple times, right? Then you want to try to get to the earliest time. You want to try to get to the core of when that really started, and that can help to discharge the energy from anything that really came from that place, or that was the kickoff point. But every system is different, and sometimes there's going to be one specific thing that you need to go into multiple times because there's different layers of it, and you might not be able to do it all, nor would you even really want to do it all at one time. Because that's the whole point, right? We want to take things chunk by chunk. So this is just a little bit of like a 15-minute intro. Love to hear your thoughts on this. I hope you guys are doing well. I realized that my hair is corn doll yellow. Wasn't exactly the vision that I had in mind. Don't hate it. I have some options for how to remedy this. It's not unremediable, but we've got some different tones happening here, sweetie. And I definitely don't ever want to touch bleach again because I got very sick. Granted, it was partly my fault because I did this in an unventilated space, which was so stupid. Why? Don't ever do that. But I got very sick from that. And other than that, I've been enjoying. I went to my first burn, my first unofficial mini burn, which was crazy to see this whole structure that had swings and was a gazebo, and people had put their intention into it, and it burned. And the craziest thing was that it had a propeller on top of it, and as it was burning, the propeller was spinning faster and faster, and at some point it started flaming debris. And I think that collectively we all had a moment where we're like, this could go really bad, but it didn't. It didn't, luckily. There's so much I could say about all of it, but I'm digesting. And what I said at the beginning about the heart really sums up a lot of it for me. Okay. Be well, guys. Be well.